Good morning and welcome back to episode 5 of Shaken Not Stirred. Spencer, happy
Good morning,
Saturday.
Tristan.
What's
Happy
going on?
Saturday. Not much. Got a good workout in this morning,
Nice.
and excited to do this episode 5 now.
Yep, episode 5.
All
It's
right.
going quick, huh?
I know. I'll put it out there now. So, Tristan and I sent Tristan a like this statistic, basically saying that it'd be much better if I quoted it, but I don't have it right in front of me. But basically, 1% of podcasts make it to 21 episodes, right? And I think it was like 10% or something like that. Still a very low percentage. Only make it to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So at least we passed that milestone. And I think we're on.
10%
Yeah,
at least now.
we're on our way to 21, and we'll make it. So we'll do something special for 21. But
Yeah.
no, I'm glad to be back. I like doing it every weekend, every Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, and
Lost.
yeah, and we'll be integrating some things new into the pod over the next couple weeks, and we were kind of brainstorming and coming up with some new ideas that I think would just make it overall a little more interesting, spice things up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
Hence
before we
why,
dive,
we've been dressing up a little bit nicer too.
yeah, absolutely, carry the brand.
Exactly.
So before we dive into really what we wanted to talk about today, which I'm pretty excited about because you and I could talk. I mean, I think we could probably turn it into like several hours
I was
as
gonna
a
say easily
conversation.
about 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to do that, but
Yeah,
I'm
we don't
very
wanna-
excited
don't wanna bore
to.
anyone for that long.
Yeah, very excited to talk about it though. But before we do that, do you have anything new and exciting going on, or?
I was going to tell you, I forgot to talk to you about this yesterday.
Yeah.
I can't go into detail on the project we landed, but the company, we got our largest project to date,
Mm-hmm.
700 million.
Wow.
So that's super exciting. And
That is awesome.
I think my boss and I are going to be the ones heading it, so that'll be a lot of fun once that comes around.
Wow. Can you say where, like the general location? or
No, just because
Got it.
there's only going to be a handful of projects like that in the area, so I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's big
it's
time.
insane. It's like I said,
Wow.
it's the largest the company's ever done. Before this, we're finishing up one now that was 400 million.
Really?
That was, I think I told you about that one. It's the Civic Center for Orange County,
Okay. Yep.
and that one we're wrapping up. We just demoed a building, and we're just putting a parking lot there, and then the whole thing's complete. The buildings are already up. The staff and everything moved in. But
So how long did that take from beginning to end?
they probably started design in 2018. So
Got it.
altogether, 5 years. I think the first building was up and people moved in 2020. Second building finished in 2021. And then, you've got to go through finishing up permits and getting all the closeout logs, making sure everything's working.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go from there. And they had an extra building on their property that was pretty much untouched, and it was kind of old and ugly. And so they just decided, okay, instead of keeping this for, pretty much nothing, let's just demo it and just backfill all that land right there, and then just put a surface parking lot for the people that are going in and out of the buildings. Yeah.
Very cool. And just a reminder, if nobody can tell, Tristan is a real estate developer. So a lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah.
And I don't think, despite everything that people say about California and politics and everything, they'll never stop building here.
Yeah.
Ever.
Never.
The money's always going to be flowing.
Yep.
Can't
And
replace it.
the population's only going to grow here. So
Yep.
even though you got people moving out, you got people having kids, and you've got other people moving in. So
And you have people moving back too. One of the
Right.
really interesting things
it's
is
literally, I would argue, the most beautiful state on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And people
Yeah.
say, well, what about Florida? I haven't spent much time in Florida. Florida looks gorgeous. Like Miami, how the water runs through the city everywhere. Looks
it's
freaking
gorgeous,
awesome.
but it's hot.
And
it's
it's hot in
humid,
California
gross.
too, but the humidity and
Right.
the bugs and like all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Alligators. You don't
it's-
have alligators in California.
Yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
it's not duplicatable. That's what I
Right.
say. But so aside from the healthcare private equity stuff, I'm also a real estate agent. If I haven't said that already, but so I'm also showing houses and trying to sell houses and trying to get clients to buy houses, and most of these are reasonably high end. So there's a house right now that
I was gonna say
I'm
you're
in the
supposed to
process.
close on one soon, right?
Yeah. It's supposed to close. I think at least we should get three solid offers. They want it really bad, three separate
Nice.
parties. But it's about a 5 to 6 million, 5 point something $1 million house. And I was in there, and one of the agents who does some out of state work as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of bounced around to different markets over the past 30 years. And I was talking to him, and I was saying, his client who was looking at the place moved from the Coachella Valley here to Vegas
Okay.
because for all the obvious reasons like tax wise
Yeah.
and things like that. And the guy's in his 70s and he's moving back, and he just told the client, and he's like, you can't, it's like I've got all this money, I worked my ass off for
And I want to
all
enjoy
my
it where I
life,
want to enjoy it,
and I
right?
want to enjoy it where I enjoy it. And you
Yeah.
can't, Vegas is cool, but it's certainly not Southern California.
Right.
And you're gonna pay tax some way. They're always
Yeah.
gonna figure out a way to get you. So, enjoy it while you can. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
Anything new
so
with you?
what?
Okay.
No, nothing major other than we're just continuing to pursue two other acquisition targets. Both of them are in Arizona, great companies.
Nice.
I guess the frustrating part to me sometimes is like this whole process is very elongated. I mean, you're dealing with people's retirement plans essentially. Like they're selling their business, which was their life
baby,
for
right? Yeah. Everything
for
they've
so
ever
many
worked
years. So it's a lot of the process. You're doing big moves. Like there's big steps involved from beginning to end.
for. Mhm.
So it's a lot of hurry up and wait, hurry
Yeah.
up and wait.
Mm-hmm.
So which is frustrating because you'd want to just kind of get on the horse and keep going, but
So you
other
try
than
to
that,
have as much in the funnel as you can.
and that's the key, because anything can happen with
Right.
these deals. Like I've got a deal right now that we're working on pretty seriously. I mean, they're cash flowing like almost $2 million a year,
Wow.
and you'd think that the bank would jump all over that, and financially they would, but the hurdle there is the company is only about 2.5 years old, and most banks want to see a minimum of 3 years.
Yeah.
So, but the bankers, they're just really focused on the numbers. For us, we're operators, so we can look at a 2-year-old company and say, okay, I think we're comfortable with it.
Right.
I think we could make this work. We understand how a company could grow so fast. The bank,
And
they
you
don't
understand
even.
the risk and everything with it, right?
Yeah. The banks, they don't even go there. It's just, does it check the box or not? So,
Yeah.
so now we're trying to get super creative and trying to figure out if we can even do it without a bank, but it's all, it's all part of the process. So
Mhm.
other than that,
Way to finance it.
nothing major. My little brother started high school this week, so that's pretty cool. It's kind of crazy, but
Nice.
yeah, other than that, I'm doing good.
Awesome.
So you wanna dive into what we're going to talk about today?
Let's do it. Yeah, I'll mention, so pretty much what we did, Spencer and I discussed grabbing, I would say, one of our favorite books, and we're just going to kind of go over why we like it and some of the substance behind it. And I know which book you chose, Spencer, and you know which one I chose. Do you want to lead us off? And
Yeah, I can do that. So a disclaimer is Tristan is much more of a reader than I am. Reading makes me tired. I fall asleep. I can read, which is a good thing, but
Barely.
no, it's just I'm just not big on reading. Don't necessarily have anything against it. I don't know, not big on reading. But the books that I have read, which candidly are few and far between, I value quite a bit, and they're always a reference from someone that I value a ton. So I take it seriously. But the book is, and I haven't actually read it, I've done it over Audible. And the reason I did it over Audible is because the way that the book is done, and the book is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. the ultra marathon athlete, former SEAL, whatever, and
Army Ranger too, I think.
yeah, he
That's
went
not
through
far.
like three different
Yeah.
SF schools or whatever. But the way the book was done on Audible, they actually suggest you do it over Audible because it's like a book / podcast type thing. So it's a very
Does he narrate it on Audible?
So he narrates. He does not
Parts of
narrate
it?
it. He's got a guy who does it, but then they will stop at certain points in the chapter after the chapters, and they'll both have this full dialogue. So you get
Okay.
much more information in the Audible than you would just in the book. So I mean,
Yeah.
I've listened to the book. I've honestly listened to the book probably, I don't know when it came out, maybe 5 to 6 years ago.
I think something like that. It was definitely like early college.
Yeah, and I've probably listened to it 5 to 6 times. Like it's for me, it feels sort of like a reset. And basically, it doesn't sound incredibly special when I say it like this. So you got to read the book. Honestly, you have to. But he basically comes from a pretty horrific background.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Brutal.
pretty severe.
Yeah.
It's just brutal. And growing up in the South and like literally like the racism aspect of it and everything else that kind of built his story is just incredible. But for those of you who don't know, he basically, and another disclaimer here is there's a lot of controversy around David Goggins and the SEAL teams. And basically he went through BUDS, which is sort of the qualification, course to get through and proceed, into the SEAL teams. And he went through it multiple times. And that's kind of his sticking point with the SEAL teams. And I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, and this is not the point of the story, but basically the problem between, that a lot of the guys in the SEAL teams have with him is basically he doesn't have the combat experience that a lot of them do, but he sells the SEAL, trident and all that. So that's not what I'm here to talk about. To me, he's more of an ultra athlete, and he is ultra athlete, like 100%. So,
I mean, the guy ran 100-mile marathons 8 times within 8 weeks or something, like 800 miles or something.
It's just
that. It's unbelievable.
absurd. Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. But for me, the thing about the book was it was incredibly relatable for me because, and sort of I'll bleed this into like my story in terms of athletics, but basically like Tristan and I both, we've always been athletes. We've always loved sports and training and everything that's involved with that. But basically going into high school, I started to play football, and every single year, which is 4 years of playing high school football, I had a severe injury. I snapped my leg one year. I tore my shoulder out the other year. I had a concussion. I had, it was just like these repeat freak accident injuries that completely set me back. So over the course of 4 years, I played less than half of the games I should have if I never had those injuries and I was just like every other athlete on my team. So for me, the whole story is basically, his come up, and it's sort of hard to explain the story if you really haven't read it, which is why I would encourage you to go read it or listen to it. But the story's incredible, and for me, it was so relatable because, as I explained to Tristan offline, it was sort of like, it was, to use the saying, when the rubber meets the road. It was like you can lift a car up and you can spin the wheels and really see how fast it goes, and you can hit 150 and 200 and whatever, but it's not doing anything until it actually hits the road, and then it just takes off. Yeah. And for me, that's what it was. And if you know anything about Goggins, he's a loud figure. What he says is very controversial. There is absolutely no filter, and it's not like in a joking way, but there's just no filter. He's an incredibly intense human being. Yeah. But for me, like having gone through all of those injuries year after year after year, and it would be like injury, rehab, get back in the gym, and I'm like lifting when I can't play, and I'm training, and it's just sort of this like kind of obsession to get back because, as I was saying, I never felt like I was the top dog like on the team. I was certainly a great athlete, and like I was definitely, one of the top 3 to 5 players, especially through high school, and like I was a known name in the valley here. but it never, I didn't ever feel like I quite had that edge. Like you know, you have those guys, whether it's in a classroom or sports, where they don't have to train that hard,
Yeah.
and they're just
show up.
they're just naturally super gifted.
That's like
And
Nathan, that played quarterback
Yeah.
for us. Literally, that kid never lifted a weight, and he hated working out. But he was one of the fastest on the field and one of the mentally best at playing football.
yeah, and
Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. So I mean, that's what it was for me. And the book is basically like the guy's story is sort of unbelievable because it's like the setbacks, and a setback is such an understatement. Like these are brutal things from like, your dad almost murders your mom because he beats her so much. You finally see, and your mom is just, she's crushed emotionally. Like it's like a shell walking down the street with nothing inside. She finally meets this guy, and like I can kind of relate to this, not in the sense that my mom was ever beat, but like having a single mom. And then, not to dig into the story too much, but basically his mom meets this guy, this great guy, and he like totally takes David like under his wing, and he's teaching him basketball, and he's doing all these things with him. And then the guy gets murdered, and David is like 8 years old, and he walks in and he's just looking at this dead body, and it's like, those things totally leave scars on people, but it didn't stop there. Like it was just these horrific things over the next several years.
Just continued.
And it just continued to happen. It was like this divine story basically, where it's just sort of unbelievable. But yeah, for me that's what it was, and it was sort of when I really started to like dig into his story and see him and watch him. I could relate to it not because I went through things as severe as that, but his mindset of like how he got through those things was very intense, and it was like doing the extreme. And because every time I'd work my ass off, there was just, it's the, what's the Greek mythology, the guy pushing the rock up the hill?
Sisyphus.
Yeah, it's like you're doing that, and then, you get 3/4 of the way, you're almost there, and the whole thing just falls back to the bottom.
Yeah.
And you have no choice, but you just got to keep pushing it up there. And, so that's kind of what it felt like for me. But the difference was I was a young man, and growing up, I was extremely shy. Like going to like a child therapist, like psychologist, because I was so shy. It was brutal for me. School was super hard because of that. Not so much academically, but it was just, I was extremely shy. So like when I started to be exposed to him, it was his way of thinking I could relate to, but the difference was he was so unapologetic about it, and he put it out there, and he put himself out there.
Yeah.
And that's how he got over it, and I really started to resonate with that. And like I said, it was like the rubber met the road. I knew his way of thinking. I could relate to it completely, but I didn't really carry it out in such a way, that he was doing. And I started to do that. He was never a gifted athlete ever, which is crazy because he is an ultra athlete.
Working hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And he had to do the extremes, and like I've always had to do that, even in school. Like I've always had to. My first law exam. Here's a perfect example: business law, like corporate law. My first exam, I remember this specifically. Like I said, I'm gonna go nuts here, and I'm gonna study. I studied for a little over 18 hours nonstop. Like I didn't go back home. Like it was nonstop 18 hours in the library at University of Redlands. I felt like I was gonna get 100% on the test. Like I knew it so well. I take the test, we get the grade back like a week later. I got a 67%.
I was gonna say you barely passed, huh?
And I was like, it was like devastating. I was like, what the hell? Like I was
put in
so
all this
mad.
work, and my boulder just got kicked down the hill.
And I went into my Professor Hutchins, who was a former corporate lawyer, I believe, and I went into him, and I remember I was like really mad. I was like, what the hell? Like, how does this happen? Like, I showed him like what I did. I walked through the entire thing. I was like, this is how I did it. This is how I processed it. And he was like, I can't change your grade, but sometimes you can work smarter, not harder. And he kind of critiqued the way that I was analyzing different cases and corporate laws and things like that. And the next test, in the next 3 exams, for that class, like I had the highest grade like in the history of his class at the University of Redlands, and studied a lot less. I mean, still worked my ass off, but it was just a different approach. So
Yeah.
I think most of the time you don't necessarily need to have, and depending on what you do, if you're an engineer, things like that, you definitely need to have the technical knowledge.
Right.
But honestly, I think most things in life, you don't necessarily need that. You have to have the right approach. Like you have to approach a problem and be able to process it appropriately.
And I think that's why there's a lot of successful people out there that say you don't need to go to college, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that it's ever a waste, but a lot of where, stuff that I'm able to handle today and stuff that I do today, I don't really amount or, I don't give any of that credibility to being in college.
Yeah.
That being said, the connections I made through college, you as a brother and our other buddy as a brother, you know what I mean? That's what I paid for, honestly.
Right.
Obviously, I paid for a little bit of fun and to get the degree behind my name, but all the jobs I've had, I didn't need the degree.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I think that's why most people would say you don't need that, but go ahead.
The book was and is like immensely valuable for me, and it really helped. I don't know how to say it. It really helped bring out what I had always. It brought out how I had always processed issues, which I think I processed issues like pretty. And when I say issues, I mean like big setbacks. And I think I processed them like pretty good. Like I've been able to handle stress and things like that really well, I think. But as I've gotten older and I've matured, I mean, we're still super young, but as I've matured emotionally, and this is such a cliche, but most of it is, you once cared what people thought, and you get to a point where you're like, the only thing that does, I mean, truly the only thing that does, I think, is it hinders, it sort of holds back like your personality and your potential. Because you're constantly, your guard is always up, and there's times to have your guard up, but there's other times where, you got to be authentic.
Unique.
You
so can't please everybody, right? Like that's just the golden rule.
Yeah, you just can't. And there's another topic that I talk about this quite a bit, and it sounds really weird, but it's like the topic of being selfish. But it's selfish in a certain way. What I don't mean is if Corbin or Tristan or any of these other people that are really close in our life, like if something happened, like you and I, if something happened with our other brother, it's like
sorry about that.
For us it's like, okay, when and where, right? And we're there, and there's no hesitation.
Have you ever seen the movie The Town?
No.
With Ben Affleck?
I don't think so.
You have to watch it. But there's a part in the movie where Ben Affleck goes up to, you know who Jeremy Renner is? I think that's his name. He plays Hawkeye for Marvel movies. Yeah. He goes up to Jeremy Renner, and they're like they go and rob banks and heists and stuff like that. And he goes up to him and he goes, "You can't ask any questions. We're gonna go hurt some people," and a few other things. And Jeremy just looks up at him and he goes, "Whose car are we taking?"
Yeah.
And I love that scene. It's probably the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you're my brother. I don't care what the reason is. We're going.
Yeah. But I mean, when you are in the building phase of life, which I think you're always building, but I mean, I think the most critical years are probably like 20 to 30 years old. And your 30s are huge, but I think the real building in terms of a foundation,
right,
are like 20 to 30. Yeah. I could even say 18 to 30, and that's like, that's 12 years. But I mean, I tell my brother this all the time, and my girlfriend Anissa. I mean, we've talked about this like extensively, like the importance. And I was never really like this, but a mentor of mine like really hammered this into my head is like sort of the idea of being selfish towards your own goals, because everybody has a certain goal for a certain reason. I know what mine is. Like in essence, mine is, I'm building this company right now. I have a timeline. I know what kind of value in terms of monetary value can be created here, but I know exactly why I want it. Yeah. Tristan and I love cars. We love Porsche. We love Aston Martin. He loves Ferrari. Just kidding. Tristan does not love Ferrari. I love Ferrari.
Not even.
And
I thought you were being serious for a second. No. I was like, what the hell did I have somebody that loves Ferrari?
No, but it's very clear to me, and I just know, and that's the value of having mentors. And even a book like this, like you've seen a guy, not so much in business, but it's in a different area of life. But there's got to be like a certain level of obsession. You're a little off your rocker. You're making decisions that most people, if you went and asked, a sweet little grandma in a nice cottage, she'd say, no, you got to do this for. And it's like, no, I just like, it's kind of ruthless, but I got to do this.
Yeah.
It just, you have to do it.
For that. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do it. And I think he embodies that so well, and he helps me like carry it out in the book.
Yeah. And I think he drives a lot of people to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely.
I'm sure you've seen all the videos of, people our age and even younger, and they're teenagers and whatnot that are, I love this because the gym has become huge for young men.
Absolutely.
So many people are posting on social media and getting really into, building aesthetic bodies and being healthier and whatnot. But they're in the gym and they're yelling at themselves, they don't know me, son, who's going to carry the boats. And it's just like, it definitely, and not that I've yelled it in the middle of the gym, but the other day I had to do a 6-mile run in an hour, which it's 10-minute mile pace, but I did at the end of the day, which was not smart. And in my head, because I was about halfway through and I was like, I'm already toast. Like my legs were hurting. It was after a back day, so I did deadlifts actually that morning. Yeah. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to get through this next 3 miles. But then I was like, you know what would Goggins tell me right now if he was standing next to me? You know what I mean? And obviously there's other motivations I told myself too, but you just sit there and you're like, who's going to do it? Who else is going to do it? Who else is running 6 miles after doing a back workout, So.
Yeah, no, and that's very true. But I think the other thing, to bring in another guy, and we're not going to like talk about this for a while, but the guy that everybody on the planet knows right now is like Andrew Tate, right? Yeah. And I was hanging out with, not hanging out, we were lifting together, a friend of mine, and he was like, hey, did you see the video that Warrior Poet Society did, or the military guy, Warrior Poet Society? He was like, he did a video on Andrew Tate, and he was talking about how like he believes he's truly a con artist, and basically what I said was, not to get into like the legal stuff, but basically what I said was, dude, whether he is or he's not, you can't use anybody as a savior. Like there's a reason, like Jesus and God, like there's a reason that we have faith. Right? There's only one. Like I can't look at Goggins and say, all right, he's the only person that I'm ever going to listen to, because then you miss out on so many other things.
Even Peterson, like Peterson talks so well and everything, but he's not perfect.
No, so I think, but my point is like, there's something you can take from everybody, and I think that you shouldn't ever try and necessarily become somebody else. Like it's easy for me with like these mentors that I have who've created immense wealth, and I'm not shy to say that like wealth is something I'm very hungry for. Like I'm a money hungry individual. Like I just am, but there's been experiences like in my young life that have like sort of made me that way, and that like literally since I was young, because I've seen what it's like, and I think I explained this in like our first episode, like I've seen what it's like to have it, and I've like personally experienced having like a single mom, what it's like to have like like nothing, and it was and it's like those things that turn you into like this person. And one of my mentors told me one time, he goes, the quickest way to failure is to try and be like me. And I was like,
you can't compare.
Whoa. Because his personality is, he's a brute, he's aggressive, he's loud, and like I'm like a pretty assertive person as well, but my
But
personality is different.
you're your own person. You're different.
Yeah, but I'm
You
just
can't mimic
different.
somebody else.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And he said that, and I was like, holy crap, I'd never thought about that before. So my point is, and there's something that you can take from everybody, and you have this own foundation of yourself, and the first step is to realize that, I'm not going to say that, the first step is you're good enough, because you're never good enough. Like, you got to be pushing. You have to continue to develop, but you were given something, and there's things about it that need to change, but you were given something, and that's what you have to build off of, and you got to use these positive things from these different, for me, mostly men, like these men in my life, and I take different things, and I take my favorite things about each of them, and I sort of bring it back in and reel it in, and it's like, okay, this is how I can apply it. So I would be it would be really disingenuous for me to say that Goggins like is not one of those individuals. I mean, I've read the thing like 6 times literally, because it's like, oh geez, I can feel myself sort of creeping back to default, and I know I need to be over here, and it's kind of that Kickstarter. It's like, nope, get back over here.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's
to put it in like a construction/development aspect. You get your wood from this person, you get your glass from that person, you get your labor from this person, you get electronics and computers and cameras, security, everything, all your AV and IT that's going into the building from another person. And so you take all these different things from different people, and you glue it together, and you build something beautiful out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good analogy to understanding how that, how pulling little things from people that you like or don't like, and modeling your life around that. Like, okay, I like this message, I can kind of follow that, but maybe I don't like this message, so I'm going to make sure I don't repeat or do that, right? So
so that's the book, though. Again, I'm not a huge reader, but I mean, I've read listened to the thing, I should say, the book about 6 times now, and I could not, I don't really care who you are. I mean, I could not recommend the book enough. And despite whatever there is between the SEAL community, the military community, and him, to me, I've got my purpose for listening to it, and it
is a pretty heavy book, though. Like, you got to be
very
able
heavy
to handle reading that, and I think most people would, because it's not. I mean, it doesn't go in depth on like the murder and everything, but you've got to be able to understand, the stuff he went through to make him who he is, right?
Yeah, and I guess he has a new book. I don't know if you've read it or listened to it.
I haven't read it yet, but I did hear about it.
I haven't either, and I guess what he does is like he brings his mom into the book, which I think would be really interesting. He said it was really hard. It was almost harder to do this one than the first book. I haven't listened to it though. I don't know why, but anyways, that's my recommendation. It's been just vital for me. It's been absolutely huge, and I'm more of a an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, business person now than I am an athlete. Although I'll always consider myself an athlete, but even then, the book is totally tailored towards any walk of life. And I think it's very applicable, but you got to apply it. So that's my
definitely. Well, if we want to jump into what I've got here, I'll show you the book, because I have it with me on my desk all the time. But
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Correct, by Dale Carnegie, which is probably one of the most known books in the world, I would argue. It's got to be on like a top 10 list at least. But, oh man, where do I even start? Essentially, I think Spencer and I talked about this a little bit. I used to be extremely shy when I was a kid, and it wasn't necessarily a lack of confidence or anything like that, but I think it was just genuine disinterest. I didn't really care about anyone or anything except for my inner circle.
Yeah.
And I didn't really find out that I have a actual genuine interest in people now until after reading this book and actually studying it. And you haven't read this, right?
I haven't. It's
If
been
I'm being
recommended
honest,
to me
I
too.
highly recommend. I could even mail you this one if you want to read it in person, but I think they have an Audible book too.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna look it up today.
yeah, but I mean, I've got the like some 7 key points that I wrote down from it pulled up, but one thing I told Spencer is this book is so designed for you to be able to pull in and utilize what you're learning from it. It's not just like, oh, read the book and then go on to your next book. It's like you're supposed to review it once a month. You're supposed to, I think, Spencer, you said you really appreciated this rule, but you're supposed to read each chapter twice before you move on to the
Yeah,
next. So you're pretty much
absolutely.
reading the book 2 times before you're done. And it really helps you pick up on the ideas and everything. But it's played a huge role in my life because, like I said, I just had no interest in learning from anyone or meeting people. And then that started to change when I started working more customer facing jobs when I was in college.
What do you think, like age wise? Like, what do you think? How old were you when you started that?
When I read this book, or when I
No,
started?
when that started to change in you,
It
the
wasn't until
disinterest.
college, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I was cool with people and I could talk to people. It wasn't a problem to talk to people,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't go out of my way if I was sitting at if I was sitting at a restaurant, I wouldn't go out of my way to, talk to my waiter or waitress and be like, hey, what are you doing outside of here? You know what I mean? Are you going to school? You got another job?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Right. And, maybe they don't bring anything to the table for you, but it's good practice for when you do meet someone that could. Right. And, where I was going with this is I read this book late college, but working in customer facing jobs, I started to develop more of an interest in people because when you come across, 50 to 60 people, different people each day within an 8-hour period or even shorter, 5-hour period. I think, I worked valet at San Manuel Casino in college when I stopped playing football, and then I also worked in the restaurant. And I think you know this too, but I did the internship with the Redlands Chamber of Commerce, which a lot of that had to do, the Chamber of Commerce job had a lot to do with community involvement. So you're going out, talking to people, shaking hands, going to mixers, all kinds of stuff, meeting business owners in the area, trying to get business owners to join the chamber. Essentially, working those jobs really opened me up to meeting people, talking to people because you wanted your tips, right? And you're not going to get tips from just quietly walking up, filling up water, and walking away.
True.
You got to sit there, you got to chit chat, but you also have to understand how to feel people out. There's some people that don't want to be bothered as much. You still want to offer your services and offer a sense of interest in them, but if they don't feel it, you've got to be able to read that and understand, like, okay, we'll be a little bit more lenient with that table or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's played a huge role in my life, opening me up and being able to, remember people's names, finding genuine interest in people, encouraging other people to talk instead of, I think this is one that I told you last night. Inherently, humans are social animals. I think that's something. Remember Scott Randolph?
Yeah.
Professor Randolph. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, Dr. Randolph. He always said humans are social butterflies, which is super true.
Yeah.
And you could get super granular on that topic, but that's not the topic of choice here. But I guess where I'm going with that is people like to talk, and people really like to talk about themselves, especially if they feel important or feel like they have done something important. And so, in any given conversation, you don't have to do a lot of talking. As long as you lay yourself out perfectly. And this is something, not to hype him up even more than he already has been, but Joe Rogan. He is literally probably one of the best interviewers on the planet.
Oh, he's probably the best.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, You,
Why do you think that is? Let me ask that question.
do you know what mirroring is?
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of the best people I've ever seen at mirroring.
Mm-hmm.
And I've practiced doing stuff like that because of him. And I don't know if you know, but that's actually a CIA and FBI tactic that they use. But dude, he's just unbelievable. Like, his podcasts are 3-4 hours long, and he does a lot of talking, but he doesn't do a majority of it. I'd say maybe 25%.
He asks good questions.
Exactly.
And that's super valuable.
Yeah, and he's really good at mirroring and keeping people talking. Jocko does the same thing when he interviews people. Mm-hmm. He's really good at mirroring too. But I think Joe's just on another level that no one can match.
Can you, for those that don't know or understand, can you define mirroring? How would you define that?
So essentially, mirroring is a tactic that's used to, I guess, persuade people to continue talking. Mm-hmm. And it has a lot to do with, just little key points. So if we're having a conversation, I'll repeat 3 words that you said. Yep. So if you said, like, oh, David Goggins is a stud, then I could, let you continue talking, but I'll just throw out there really quick, like, oh my gosh, isn't he a stud? Yeah. And it just keeps a chemistry and a bond between the brains that I don't think a lot of people understand is there. Yep. And it fuels it. But something so small and so minor, it'll fuel it to keep going. But pretty much, I would say that's a decent explanation of what it is. Obviously, I'm sure it's a lot more granular and goes deeper than that. But another thing that I told you from this book is, I don't remember exactly how Dale says it, but he says there's a whole chapter on remembering people's names and referring to people by name, which has played all the difference from my last job at Tesla, because I'm working in Orange County, right next to Newport Coast, in between LA and San Diego and Orange County. I could not tell you the amount of, not just famous, like there's some famous people that we helped, baseball players, football players, all kinds of, we helped Matt Stafford, you know what I mean? It's like, you come across everybody of all different walks of life around here in this area, especially business owners and people who I am honored to consider my mentors now. But I would have never got there if I didn't have a genuine interest in, learning at least on a very minimum level their first name or their last name. And it makes all the difference. And especially, you said this last night, it's more for the older crowd. If I met someone nowadays that's our age, they probably wouldn't care too much. But people that are older, it's super easy to get along with them if you just find something in common with them. Like you told us that you didn't talk about it on here, but you've told us a story about the gentleman that used to serve pizza and stuff too when you were working at the pizza shop.
We can get into a couple of those stories if you want.
For sure. But I mean, you complimented his car. That's instantly you're creating that bond, that chemistry between the two minds, saying, okay, we're both into cars. Unfortunately, it was a Ferrari, but
depending on who you ask.
Right. You get what I'm saying with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's huge. And Dale says specifically that the best thing any person can hear in any given language is their own name. And that's because, like I said, humans are inherently selfish. And they want to hear their own name. They want to hear what they've done, because people want purpose. People strive, and they're hungry for purpose. And I think that's, like you said, you're hungry for wealth. I think it's also you're hungry for purpose. You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
Finding that purpose and executing correctly on that purpose is what brings the wealth.
And actually, I want to clarify something. When I say that, the reason I said that, and the reason, like, I can say, I'm not going to lie, like, I'm money hungry. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I want, like, that's what I really want. At the as the sort of the end result of building something that was immensely valuable for a lot of people, employees. the reason I brought that up earlier is, before I might not have said it that way. I would have sugarcoated it. I would have, done something to soften the landing a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it that way to tie in sort of like the change in, perhaps even the way that I sort of carry myself and how it was influenced so much by Goggins, right?
Yeah.
You feel it, and it's kind of the right time. You just say it. So, no, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot more to it. I mean,
yeah.
I know what I want to do with wealth, and it's not just cars. I mean, there's like a lot that means a ton to me. And you and I have talked about that as extensively. And there's a lot of things that we share there, and you can't do those things unless you have those resources. It's just a fact. Mm-hmm. So, just to clarify, keep going.
Yeah. So for the most part, what I've been talking about is, there's two different parts to this book. There's how to win friends, and then there's how to influence people. And it's definitely split up. I think the last couple chapters is how to influence people. What I've, mainly been talking about the last couple minutes is how to win friends. But one thing that really sat with me as well is I've always prided myself on trying to be the best leader that I could possibly can. And that's constantly evolving, because people are constantly evolving, and every person's different. So you've got to be able to read and understand each person that is, whether they're working under you or working for you or, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. You've got to understand who they are. You've got to understand what motivates them, what drives them, how to deliver it. A lot of people think I'm not a big fan of people that rule in fear. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Obviously, sometimes it's necessary, but people that are constantly going out and they're like, yeah, you do this because I say, you do that because I say, you do this because I say, listen to me. It's like, it's not the best way to lead. That's how you lose people.
And if you don't, X, Y, Z.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, obviously there's probably necessary times to be that way. But if you're constantly like that, you're not going to grow as much as I think you would want to.
Especially in today's day and age.
For sure. Back in the day, it was just like, that's how it was. People were, okay, yes, sir, get back to work. Yeah. Nowadays, things have completely changed. And again, you've got to understand each individual person's given situation.
Yep.
And this book definitely helps with that. One story in the book that Dale talks about, and I don't remember the exact company or who the CEO was, but I think it was a sawmill. They worked for a sawmill somewhere in the South, and they were having huge issues with the night crew was not getting as much done as the day crew. And that's because they don't have the oversight that the day crew does. You know what I mean? The CEO's not walking around during the night. They're probably walking around during the day.
I got to plug my computer in. Keep talking.
Go for it. Essentially, what happens is the CEO catches on to, okay, why is the day crew doing so much better than the night crew? Well, there's no supervision during the night. It's all happening during the day.
Right.
And so the CEO showed up for a night crew, and he put I'm assuming at the time it was probably a chalkboard, not a whiteboard, but he put a board up in front of all of them, and he, wrote down what the day crew did throughout the day. Let's just say the number is 20, right? Mm-hmm. So he writes 20 on the board and he circles it, and he goes, if the night crew can beat this number and continuously beat the day crew's numbers, then everyone gets like a stupid bonus or something like that, right? And they just took off, bro. It was like, without a question, they all went straight to work, and they annihilated by, let's call it 30-40% better production rate than the day crew. Yeah. But then the day crew came in, and he's like, hey, night crew did these numbers. If day crew does better, you'll get a bonus. And they literally just they ran he created competition within the company. Yep. And it made a whole difference for that sawmill. They ended up becoming one of the largest in the country. Yeah. But, that's not, he didn't go in there and rip the night crew and say, you guys are, horrible, you guys suck. Yeah. I'm going to fire every one of you if you don't produce, because what would they have done? Okay, I'll go find another job.
Yeah. And
Or
people have options today too.
exactly, that's the other
You've got
thing.
options. I mean,
For sure.
it's not that hard to go find a job.
Right. It it's really not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can make a lot working multiple jobs. You know what I mean? You can go bartend at night, work a day job or even a part-time day job, bartend
Yeah.
at night and make plenty of money. And so, yeah, I mean, being able to, I mean, that guy's extremely creative for not going in there because I'm sure he could have just gone in there, ripped him a new one, but where would that have gotten him? Right. So, yeah, I think that's influencing people. It's not going in and just wrecking like a wrecking ball. It's going in
Right.
methodically, strategically, and creating the difference that you need, not the difference that you want.
Yeah. So
So,
I can give a little example that ties in with that perfectly,
mhm.
and it gave me a different way of thinking about leadership and dealing with people, especially like in the line of business that I'm in and what my specific responsibility is, which is like really unique because basically I am,
I was going to say,
basically,
let's talk about exactly technically what you do. It's pretty much private equity for medical sector, right?
yeah, basically. So like we buy companies, but I'm in the building phase of this company. So, I am, if it's not me, it's nobody else. Meaning, if I'm not the one making all the cold calls and talking to all these different business owners and trying to get them to the table and sell what they've built over the past 20 years to a 25-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So basically I'm kind of a salesperson. Like that's really what I am. And I had a board meeting and my mentor, who we just brought on as our vice chairman of our company, he took over part of the meeting, and there's this concept that he sort of gave me. It was an idea that he used in the past with a bunch of portfolio companies that he had. And basically what it is, it's what we would call a council of presidents. And you have these business owners who not only is their entire net worth and retirement plan wrapped up in the business, but their entire identity most of the time is in that business. It's just like athletes. It's just like
Right.
guys in the military. At some point that has to end.
Yep.
And then what? You know what I mean? Oh, I am so sorry. It's like, and then what? And so basically, he was talking and he goes, Spencer essentially is in the business of psychological counseling.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that is so true.
Mhm.
Because you're dealing with human beings and the emotion. It's a constant, unpredictable emotional roller coaster, and you have to create the environment for people.
For sure.
And I think your example is it's a perfect example of that. You have to create the energy. It's just like a sports team. It's like for all the athletes out there that might be listening to this, you and I can attest because we were on the exact same team. If we didn't create that environment in the locker room when the lights are off and the music's on, everybody's going freaking insane and we're about to walk onto the field. If it was just everybody, no music, nonchalant, nobody really likes each other, it's like it's
Right.
totally different. You know what I mean? And it really affects people. We're all humans, so
Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right about that.
And totally had an idea on the top of my head, but it slipped away. So we'll come back to that if I think of it. But yeah, I totally agree, and it makes sense because you, like I said earlier, you've got to be able to understand people's motivation because maybe their motivation is not to make money on their sale. Obviously they want to have enough to retire and live off of it for the rest of their life because they've built this, like you've said before, it's their baby. You're pretty much convincing them to sell their baby, but you've got to do the right kind of convincing. You can't just go in there and be like, you can't just wave money in their face. What I mean? Some people, that might be the motivation. Others, it's like they want to know that the company is going to be taken care of and that the people are still going to be taken care of. Like it, much like selling a sports team. I'm sure if Jerry Jones ever sold the Cowboys, I'm sure that guy would be devastated.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, it's all about being methodical, strategic, and doing it correctly.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So I'll have to read that book. Obviously, it's a highly recommended book around the world. I've heard
Yeah.
about it endless times, so
Mhm.
I'll definitely give it a read or listen.
Yeah. I mean, again, even if you do the Audible, just listen to it, dude. I mean, there's a reason. I don't know how many copies have been sold, but it's been printed for 80 years and it hasn't
Yeah,
been replaced by
crazy.
another book. It hasn't been replaced yet. You know, some
Yeah,
books come and go because they get replaced by ones that are improved and better, but this one hasn't been touched.
yeah.
So,
No, it's amazing. Would you mind reading? Didn't he give like a couple instructional things like in the beginning on that
the
one
rules,
page?
yeah.
Yeah, could you read those? I
Hmm.
thought those were interesting. You read like two of them, but
Yeah, I think I mentioned a couple at the beginning, but so there's a big bullet in the top, and it says, "The more you get out of this book, the more you'll get out of life." Which, I mean, that's literally the first sentence in the book, and I would 100% agree with it because, like I've said, all the mentors, the situation that I'm in has been because I've implemented these tactics and themes into my life. But in order to get the most out of this book, A, develop a deep driving desire to master the principles of human relations. B, read each chapter twice before going on to the next. C, as you read, stop frequently to ask yourself, how can you apply each suggestion? And so I think I explained to you when we had originally talked about doing this. Literally, when I read the chapter about, memorizing people's books, or names, I'm sorry, I would literally everyone I came across, waitress, waiter, person at the grocery store, person at the gas station, and anytime I'd see him again, it would just click. It's like, oh, hey Spencer, how's it going? Oh, hey, yeah, it's been a minute. I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, or
Yeah.
and you just kick off conversation, and people light up because you hit them with, you're like, wow, you remembered my name. I feel important, Underscore each important idea. E, review this book each month. F, apply these principles at every opportunity. Use this volume as a working handbook to help you solve your daily problems. G, make a lively game out of your learning by offering some friend a dime or a dollar every time he or she catches you violating one of the principles. Which, that one's kind of crazy.
Accountability.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it's about. H, check up each week on the progress you are making. Ask yourself what mistakes you have made, what improvement, what lessons you have learned for the future. And lastly, I, keep notes in the back of this book showing how and when you have applied these principles.
I think it's probably fair to say that it would be a really good thing to do is create a buddy system when you read the book.
Oh, for sure.
Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, if you've got, let's just put your brother and one of his friends, for example, like if they were to read it and, they're what, 13, 14, if they just started
14, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, he's very mature, and so I'd say maybe he's old enough to start diving into something like this, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, definitely read it with somebody else, and then it's got to be obviously someone that you hang out with a lot,
right?
And definitely hold each other accountable.
Yeah, one of the other things that I was thinking about, not necessarily specific to either of the books that we've talked about, but the topic of reading books in general. Mm-hmm. So you hear people talk about they read X amount of books a year, and it's just like this absurd. They're reading a book a week.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree with this, and if you disagree, make sure you tell me. But I'm really big on, just take action,
efficiency.
More action. Yeah, but it's like if you're going to read this book, you better apply the principles. Otherwise, I think, in my opinion, it was a total waste.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think if you read a book like that where it's highly instructional, not some story of, I don't know, some, fictional story or something, but it's highly instructional and it's meant to take something away from the book, I would really suggest maybe you read 1 or 2 books a year, but you spend 6 months going back and reading the book and going back and reading the book and like applying it for 6 solid months or even 12 months, depending on what you're reading.
Precisely.
Because otherwise, I mean, if you're reading a book a week, like, are you really being...
Are you getting anything out of it?
Are you maximizing the content in the book?
Yeah.
I would go to say you're probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such an influx of information, that's coming your way. And I don't know, I was thinking about that when you were talking about this. I just feel that would probably be a good thing, because the few books that I've read them multiple times, and I've done it because I was reading them and I'm like, holy crap, I mean, these are things that should absolutely be done and be executed on probably daily. Mm-hmm. And I need continuous reminders of it. So
yeah,
would you agree with that?
I think so. I think there's some people that don't struggle to, pick up and hold. My sister, literally, mm-hmm. she starts PA school in 2 weeks, by the way. Yeah. So huge for her. But going back to what you talked about earlier, like having to try and having to put mm-hmm. so much effort towards something to, become even decent at it.
Yeah.
My sister can touch a book, especially if it has to do with something she's interested in, like science. Mm-hmm. She could touch a book, read it, read 15 pages, and she could almost repeat word for word those 15 pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't do that. I have to sit there and reread until my brain, picks up. It's like, okay, this is making sense. So I think for some people, maybe it is possible. I don't think that goes for everyone at all. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of people that aren't reading super intentional books either, though. They're reading Harry Potter and stuff like that. Not that there's not stories in Harry Potter that are meaningful.
Right.
Or messages hidden in it, you know what I mean? But I also don't think that they're pulling those messages out of it when they're just flying through the book and not, not paying too much attention to exactly what they're reading. Right now I'm reading Jordan Peterson's Beyond Order.
Yep.
12 Rules of Life. It's probably one of the hardest books I've ever read in my life. One, because Jordan's Jordan, like he rambles in his books like he does in real life. It's like jumps all over the place. But also, his vocabulary is just insane. Yeah. Like he says some words I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing, Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like reading another language, and they're so philosophical. And so what I started having to do is I will take note cards and I'll write down words that I don't know, and then I'll study those words, and I'll go back and reread the chapter. And so then it helps, pick up on it, but people aren't doing that. You know what I mean? They would just read through, pick up on little things, and then move on.
Yep.
Which I think I'm in agreement with you, especially, again, it's different for everyone, but for someone like myself and the way I learn, definitely I could not do 52 books in a year.
Yeah.
I think my goal this year is going to be 10. Mm-hmm. I'm on 3 right now.
Yeah.
But, I've intentionally read the first 2.
That's good.
And now I actually read Can't Hurt Me at the beginning of this year. That was the first time I read it.
You did?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And then, I'm working on what's his name's Peterson's book right now, and then we're gonna move on from there. But it's I definitely agree with what you're saying there. Good. Because efficiency, maximizing all that, you definitely want to get as much as you can out of it.
Yeah. And I need repetition too.
Yeah.
If I'm a lot of people will listen to audiobooks when mm-hmm. they're working out. Can't do it.
No.
I'm focused on my workout. Otherwise I'm not gonna I won't retain any of the book. I just won't. Mm-hmm. I gotta really hone in and focus on something. So but listen, everybody's different, right? Yep. Your sister is going to read a book different than you will and different than I will. So
exactly.
Just got to find your groove.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Alrighty.
Right. Well, anything else?
Passed over an hour, but I don't think so, but we'll have to continue this, book diving.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point we listen to a single book or read a single book together and then dive into it a little bit. But
Yeah, we can do that.
I think every once in a while we should, because I think that's huge for, especially young men and women these days. Put down the phone, listen to a book, read a book,
Yeah.
even if it's at the end of the day. Like you did 75 hard. At a minimum, I try to do 20 pages a day.
Yeah.
And it makes a world of a difference because it truly stimulates your brain. Not only are you learning something from it, but you're picking up on different vocabulary and how to deliver what you want to say. I recently started practice writing because that's something Peterson talks about. So sometimes after I read, I've got a little notebook that I keep under my bed, and I'll just start making up a story, and I'll just start writing, and it's kind of fun, but it helps. Like I said, it helps become intentional with your speech and being able to talk to people in person because you're actively practicing how to deliver what you want to say. So,
articulate your message clearly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I read, on that topic, I actually read something. This guy, this investor was breaking down, how did he say it? It was either the main responsibility of a CEO or the best CEOs it was the best CEOs are those who are able to aggregate data that most people could not pull together and then explain it in a way that everyone across the board can understand.
And then make it
so valuable. So valuable.
For sure.
So,
I think, not to dive too deep into this, but that's something, you listen to Huberman podcast?
I have occasionally, yeah.
Okay. That's something he is extremely good at, because that guy is crazy smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people that you listen to and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he has a very good way of delivering what he's talking about to, I guess, dumb it up is probably the lack of a better word or explanation. He can really dumb it up for the people that are listening, because I think he knows that not everyone listening has a grip on how science works and how the brain functions and how muscles function, but he really, really, really puts things in a way that it makes sense. Like I can listen to the podcast and say, oh, okay, like I'm learning something here and I'm understanding what he's talking about. So, just as an example, for everyone listening, you should listen to how Huberman delivers his messages and ideas and whatnot.
Yep, I agree. Totally agree. Alrighty.
All right.
Anything else?
I got nothing to add.
Okay, same here.
But,
all right.
We'll see you next weekend.
Yes,
Saturday
absolutely.
We'll be kicking off episode 6.
Yep. We'll add some new things into it that I think will add a little different.
We're gonna put a lot of time into brainstorming and figuring out how to make things more interesting and whatnot on here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right, Tristan.
All right.
Thank
Have
you
a good
for
weekend, Spencer.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk soon.
Yep. Sounds good.
Bye.